Hey, what's up? Just popped with another video, and so I was doing this in the same series. I was saying that sometimes when you're really doing real leadership, like I was referencing officers in a military theater. I was contrasting in enlisted leaders and commissioned leaders is that my understanding is that they have a different oath, and it speaks to some of the nuance of their roles, and it's not greater or lesser, because you can't have the saddle without the horse, or the horse without the saddle. And I don't mean to denigrate anything, but just that you actually need all parts of a composite to have a viable composite, and they're not different, but they have different the author Arthur Avalon said that nothing in this reality is completely bound or completely free, and that's actually because things are completely unified and interdependent. Interdependent is the greatest word. It's not codependent and it's not dependent, but it's interdependent, and there's actually no freedom outside of interdependence, or maybe interdependence without freedom. An example of that would be like an ant. So ants are they're interdependent. They're not codependent, because an ant can handle more than its own weight. It can handle 10 times its own weight. It can carry 10 times its own weight. Whatever kind of, I don't know what kind of push-ups they could do, but if you were to put that into human terms, that would be some crazy type of calisthenics that an ant can do with 10 times its own strength. The only thing I've seen that cool is, like, there's a brother on YouTube named King Hannibal for King. Shout out that brother. He's like a longtime fitness head, real life, honest to reality fitness head, like from the New York area. And the type of things he can do with a simple playground to improvise exercise and challenge himself with that type of creativity and spontaneity, but also intelligence and efficiency, to do things that are more complex physiologically, ergonomically, anatomically, than could be understood and grasped by your finest physiology textbooks and anatomy and physiology courses at your high tier institutions par excellence. I would be impressed if any type of organized academic or even medical research or undertaking could enunciate or understand or rival the type of ingenuity and creativity, but also challenge and symmetry and strength that Hannibal for King shows in some of his fitness videos on YouTube is simply outstanding. But that's what you would be looking at if you actually saw an ant in physical terms. It'd be something like Hannibal for King is the closest things we have to an ant in terms of his strength per his body size. But an ant is no less interdependent with all that strength, because it still depends on its family and its community, and it's still as happy to serve that. And you might say it'd be similar with bees too, or like wasps, or a lot of insects are really brilliant and outstanding, and they're a perfect example of interdependence. That is heterogeneity, individuality, difference, disparate diversity, not necessarily completely diverse, but at least individual for a lot of insects. But if you take insects broadly speaking, collectively, insects are very diverse. And if you took them as a bigger family, they'd be as diverse as individuals and profound as a collective community. If you take insects as different members of the same family, but within one particular genus or like species of insects as we appreciate them, is like with ants and so forth, is that they're a perfect example of the individual within the whole, and the whole within the individual, all for one and one for all. And that's a lot of what reality is, according to Arthur Avalon. It's heterogeneous, different, and homogeneous, and the same at once. And because of that, it's now dynamic, therefore polarized, therefore charged, therefore viable, therefore enjoyable, therefore life. But he says that within that dynamic, nothing is entirely free or bound, and freedom and binding is always relative, because you can have someone who's incarcerated, but they might actually have the freedom to meditate and reflect or read a book. And you can have someone that's appreciated as free in civil society, and they can be tighter bound within their obligations and duties, such as a person with a military tour or duty. Some aspects of a military lifestyle and service are more rigorous, but also binding than actually incarceration or slavery. It's actually I once heard someone say ain't no party like a slave party, and that was in a type of training where that statement was said. But all I meant to say is that So freedom and binding are relative, but it serves a greater purpose, and you're more so free by how honest you are and how forthright and how helpful you are to a group. How the more interdependent you are, the more collaborative, the more of a contribution you are. Therefore, you have now greater standing and greater scope of agency that is experienced as freedom and maybe enjoyment. Enjoyment is a form of agency and also freedom, but even enjoyment and freedom and agency are relative to the greater purpose and design of a community, interest of a community. You can be the most free thing. You can be as free as a bird. But what joy have you, what meaning have you without another bird to share that with, or to talk about, or to write back to, or to send home about all this free stuff you're doing? So you go backpacking, you go to the top of Himalayas. Is that enjoyable with no one to write back to, with no one to care about you, no one to share that with? It could be that could be enjoyable, but you're still sharing it with yourself. So that's a little bit, and you can appreciate that there's still you, yourself, and you, me, myself, and I. And there's something of duality within you, in that you have more than one person in you. I think you have at least two ancestors, your parents. So it still takes community to enjoy anything, even being alone. And so you can have all the freedom, but what does that mean without someone or something to share with, even if that's yourself? So we're still yet somehow bound and limited by our interdependence, but it's still beautiful. But what I was gonna say is that but sometimes you can understand things by changing the terms. I forgot where I was going with some of that, but I had someone said on the channel, why am I here? So that might sound like why did this appear in my feed? What am I doing on a channel like this with someone talking like this? Or actually, how did I get to Earth? How did I get to being educated to understand this matrix, or to interface with this matrix? You could take a lot of that, but then you could also change the terms and just say it could easily be appreciated. The expression, not the terms, but the expression could say the same, and then you change the terms to what am I here? What am I? What am I here? What I want to say is that it's just my, like, what I would say to that, it just as a thought exercise, and therefore a challenge, and then potentially valuable, is what you may be is you are both a cause and an effect. You are the effect of at least one cause, which could exist as many causes. All the different circumstances that would conspire to you now, and maybe previously, and now, and yet again existing, is the cause of you. But then also there's the effect of you. So you are a cause. You have been caused by different influences and factors. Collaborating and competing are your cause, but you are also part of all those causes and not different than those causes, and therefore a cause yourself. So you are then thereby an effect to others and yourself. So in the simplest of terms, you're cause and effect, and you can't have the cause without the effect, maybe not the effect without the cause. So there's that. And then you are, I would say maybe you're superficial, because you can't help but be superficial because you're in a superficial paradigm. Now, the word paradigm is similar to RAS, reticular activation system, which is that you recognize what you have experienced before on some level. So when some of the indigenous people around the world were first encountering Europeans, like arrive on the horizon in a boat, as broad and blatant and obvious as a boat is, they didn't is appreciated that they might not have understood or recognized that they were looking at a boat, because that is outside their experience, therefore outside their paradigm. So they had no reference to even appreciate that there is such a thing as a boat, or understand what it might have looked strange, but there wasn't a paradigm or reference for that. But in our reality, we have not a paradigm or reference for what is real. So most things are artificial to different degrees, even our personality, even our taste, even our thoughts, even our ideas, even our statements, even our acts and doings. So much, including anything on the matrix, generally speaking, is completely false.